I remember being at the end and being like, I'm cold, I'm tired, I haven't washed my socks in 7 days, my hair big. This was rough, but wow. I remember feeling like, wow, I am not the same person I was before I came here.
Did you know that women make 85% of travel decisions? Whether booking a trip for our families or cleaning the hotel rooms, women are the backbone of the travel industry. But the people we see in travel shows, marketing, and leadership, they don't look like us. Now we're cutting through the noise to talk to the changemakers, the trailblazers, and the women who make travel what it is and how we can make travel better for all of us. This is 85%. I'm your host, Beth Santos.
Hey everyone, Beth here. If you haven't noticed, we're trying a whole different format for season 2 of 85%. It's not just about interviewing fascinating women in travel. It's also about getting to the heart of some of their most central pieces of advice, served to you through a travel story. I'll be honest, when I shared the audio concept for season 2, I got a lot of, well, explain that again? It seems like I'm becoming the master of, can't really explain it, let me just try it and I'll get back to you. What can I say? I love shaking things up. This is no shame to other podcasts out there, of course, especially ones that have really nailed the ability to host fascinating, interesting interviews. But for me, the interview style of podcasting just hasn't been enough. I wanted ear candy. I wanted clear takeaways. And I wanted some good, like really good travel stories. Because we travelers, we just love a good travel story. Well, if you're a lover of a great travel story, let me tell you something. You, my friend, are in luck because I have a really, really good travel story today. It's so good that you're honestly going to wonder if it's even possible that it's real. You're going to ask yourself, is it really true that that actually happened? So I'll tell you right now, it did. My guest today is wildly interesting. And if you saw the title of this episode and you follow travel influencers, it's probably not a surprise to you who it is. It's the endlessly talented, wildly successful, funny, and totally inspiring travel content creator, Gabby Beckford. Okay, let's give her a real intro, though. Gabby Beckford is the award-winning travel entrepreneur and creator at PAX Light. Her audience is women who aspire to a life of adventure lived on their terms. Gabby delivers in so many ways. She creates inspiring content, telling the world, and especially young people, that we all deserve a chance to get out there. She runs a Saas startup called SeekPTO that offers an all-in-one platform for financially accessible travel opportunities, community, accountability, and educational resources focused on making travel more accessible than ever before. And she's given $30,000 in travel grants to her audience, helping marginalized communities travel for work, for school, for fun, and for free. Because of her accolades, she's been featured in national publications like the New York Times, CNNTravel, Travel+Leisure, and more. Gabby is what many would call the savviest of savvy travelers. It seems like she's always somewhere, on a Kenyan safari, or skiing in Sapporo, Japan, or driving through Utah in a Jeep. Most of the time, she just looks perfect too. Bright-eyed, smiling, taking big bites out of life. Maybe you think she's always been that way. That she's always known where to go and how to get there, and even, what to pack. And that is where you would have been woefully incorrect, friends. Now it's time to tell one of Gabby's favorite travel stories. Let me set the scene. Wind whips over the tent fabric, testing the nylon strength. Outside, loose flaps dance in the cold air, which kicks up swirls of snow whenever the wind changes direction. It may be August, but here in Iceland, on top of a glacier, it's absolutely frigid. It's the middle of the night, you wouldn't know it. Summer in Iceland means midnight sun, so inside the tent, it's still bright enough to see without a flashlight. You're at the top of the Dragon's Nest, a section of volcanic rock. A tiny 2-person tent is pitched on top. Inside the tent lies a 17-year-old Gabby Beckford. If you've ever gone backpacking before, you'll know that a 2-person tent doesn't actually fit 2 people, unless you're snuggled next to each other like sausages. But in Gabby's case, that's kind of exactly what's happening. Not only is she sharing a tent with a complete stranger, but she and her 22-year-old tent mate are sleeping back to back in the same sleeping bag. Her group is to cover 40 kilometers, or roughly 25 miles, of Iceland's mountainous terrain. Just shy of being an adult, it's her first solo trip ever. She put on a cute outfit, hopped on a plane to Iceland, and showed up for it with a big smile on her face. Let me say that for you again, just in case any of you are missing the small but extremely important detail of this story. Gabby put on a cute outfit, she got on a plane, and she arrived on a 7-day backpacking trip. Yep, that was it. What I'm trying to tell you is this. When Gabby took her first solo trip, a backpacking trip nonetheless, she came with nothing. No luggage, no food, no supplies at all.
And that's the thing, is the first day I was in the front because I didn't have anything. I had my phone and a cute outfit. And then everyone's like, all right, set up camp. And I had to stop. And I didn't want to tell the troop leader guy because we were still the first day. I'm like, what if he makes us walk back? I can't be the one who ruined the trip so early. This nice girl who was the girl who was closest to my age, I think she was like 21, 22. I was like, hey, I did not bring a suitcase. Can I share yours? Can I share your 1-person, very slim, like sleeping bag for the next 7 days? And she's like, oh my God. Okay. And so we're back to back in this sausage casing for 7 days with this girl I just met. And she's like 5'10" and I'm 5'2". And we slept like that. And I was like, yeah, this is my life. But those are the people you meet when you're traveling, because actually I think that all of those people would have said yes if I asked them. And if someone asked me if I was traveling, I would have said yes. But I think most people would say yes. I was probably crying at that point. She's like, Jesus, this girl's going to die. Okay. Probably pity involved. But yeah, I think people are nicer than we give them credit for, actually. Travelers, at least. Like in the reality of it, people usually say yes.
In case you ever have a moment on a trip when you're mad at yourself for forgetting something silly, your toothbrush, those boots, the extremely important battery pack that you needed for your phone. Just take solace in knowing that we all make mistakes. I mean, one of the world's greatest travel creators showed up on a trip without anything, and she survived it. What does that mean? That means you can survive just about everything too. But this isn't a story about shaming or forgetfulness. This is a story about learning, about being willing to rely on others, about picking yourself up and dusting yourself off. And on this 7-day hike, that's exactly what Gabby did.
First day I'm in the front of the pack. I'm going up the hills and stuff, and I'm like, I did gymnastics in high school. Like, I'm great. And by the second day, I'm like, oh my God. This is a bit more. Yeah, and by the second day, third day, I'm like at the back. They're like, Gabby, come on. And it's blistering winds and scorching deserts. Like, it's freezing cold, and then it's so hot and it's windy. We're sleeping in the Dragon's Nest, which is like jagged volcanic rock. Like, I'm like, what the? I thought this was cute. It was terrible. It was so cold. It was miserable. The confidence, if I could make a graph, was very high, drops low very quickly. But that low drop, I think, was pivotal. That I kept saying, like, why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? Okay, God, in life, why am I here? Existential crisis was happening as I'm, like, clawing my way up the, like, volcanic sand.
Maybe Gabby's attitude had something to do with the fact that she was on a 7-day trip. It wasn't like she could just turn around and leave. The hike meant that she had to stick it out, no matter what. And, believe it or not, something started to happen after the first few days. That girl that came totally unprepared and completely out of her element, she started to change.
I remember that moment viscerally. I was back to back with the girl in the sleeping bag, and it was 1 a.m., bright as heck outside, and we're trying to sleep. And I had been writing my journal before, and I remember having a thought and being like, okay, I want to write it. And that's when I realized I'd rather be here having a bad time, quote unquote, cold and hungry and tired and like out of place. And the only person of color, no one else has to deal with curly hair. Like, I would rather be here still than at home. Do I regret it? And I remember thinking like, damn, this sucks. But somehow the answer is no. And that's when my brain was rewired. So yeah, I was back to back with that girl writing my journal, being like, damn, I still am glad I came. I could literally feel the gears turning. Smoke was coming out. I'm like, okay, wait, I'm getting used to this. Like I'm liking this now. And I think that whole experience of it was miserable, but I would still rather be miserable and growing than be back at home and never have tried. I remember feeling like that. I remember being at the end and being like, I'm cold, I'm tired. I haven't washed my socks in 7 days. My hair, big. This was rough, but wow. I remember feeling like, wow, I am not the same person I was before I came here. Not because it was Iceland specifically, but because I think I had put myself so far out of my comfort zone. And I was like, I could do that again. And I think it would be easier. And I just kept doing it again for 10 years now.
And that, my friends, was the beginning of Gabby's travel blog, Pax Light.
The legacy of Pax Light, I think I just want it to be about abundance. I want it to just show people like that you are your own limiter in life and like what other people's reality does not have to be your own. Start asking why not and skipping why. And I want that to be the essence of the legacy is if you don't see an opportunity, make it. If you don't like the way things are done, change it. Chart your own course without acceptance of the status quo, because that's made up too. Why are we accepting a reality that is not even real? Like I have a visceral memory when I was 5 or 6, going to the checkout line in a grocery store with my dad. And there's 2 grocery store lines and they have like 10 people each. I'm like, oh, and then one opens up. And so we're walking up from a distance and we're like, oh, people are going to go over and even them out, but no one moves. And I remember my dad being like, okay, let's go on that one. I'm like, we're walking past all these people and they could be like, oh, like, I'm going to go behind her. I remember viscerally asking my dad, why didn't they move? He's like putting stuff on the checkout line and being like, Gabrielle, most people would rather stay comfortable in what they know than step out of line and ask the question, hey, is this open? I think he said most people are sheep. They don't question things. And he's like, but we're not like that. We question things. It's okay to step out of line and ask a question. Yeah, because I was already like, why aren't they moving? That doesn't make sense logically. And then for him to say it, I'm like, oh, most people have not just asked themselves the question of like, why would I stand here? That self-awareness. That's the essence of Pax Light is like, let's wake up and start looking around and being like, why?
I want to take a minute to say thanks so much to our sponsors, B&H Photo and Video, and Sony for these incredible new podcasting mics that they gave us and all of our podcast guests this season. The B&H Creator team supports creators of all sizes and niches, and they're actively trying to help create a fair landscape in the creator economy with free education and really great resources. Make sure to follow them on social at bh.creators on Instagram and bhcreators on TikTok. They're regularly hosting events, and they partner with communities like ours at Wonderful to support the work we are all doing together.
Pax Light has become more than just a blog. It was the winner of 2, count them, 2 Bessie Awards. One for a collaboration with Intrepid Travel, and the other was the Social Impact Award for Pax Light's Study Abroad Redo Grant.
A lot of my audience is younger and Gen Z, and they had their study abroad ruined in 2020 because they were about to go to Italy and have that big trip, or they were about to go to Japan and have that big study abroad and learn Japanese, and the pandemic hit. And then there was an entire generation who just didn't study abroad because 2-3 years were gone. So a lot of my audience, and I would post up about my study abroad and they'd be like, oh, I never got that. And that was my inspiration of like, okay, why not? Worked with sponsors, go overseas in the Nomadic Network. Shout out to them. They sponsored $5,000 scholarships. And then I sponsored the last one myself.
With the Study Abroad Redo Grants, Gabby sent travelers on the study abroad experiences they should have had.
I think from the beginning of Pax Light too, it was always about making things accessible, I think, mentally to people. Like, hey, it's not that crazy to fly to Iceland. You get on the flight. Logistically, just like breaking down that mental barrier of like, what is it going to be like? I can't even imagine. I can't even fathom. So that's what Packsite has been like with the travel tips. But from the beginning too, again, I was broke. So I was applying to scholarships just to get into college and like pay for college. And I've always been like keeping my eye out for opportunities. And when I came across study abroad scholarships and like, oh, I can go to a conference that's in Austria for school and like they'll pay for it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm also in Austria. So win-win. I would discover that type of stuff in college. And that's what led to me sharing it on Packsite as the PTO dashboard. I think it's all still about accessibility, or like, I don't agree fundamentally that something should be gatekept and so, like some things are for some people. The whole concept of that is not real to me. Like, here's a redo for your study abroad. Like, let's ignore that. Second chances don't exist. So that's where the concept came of like sharing those opportunities. I think just awareness is a big hindrance and like a big gate for a lot of people is like, I didn't even know this existed. I didn't even have the spark of realization that this concept existed. I'm like, okay, that's what I can do, is to be that spark and then just get you started. But you have to do that work yourself.
Gabby has built her entire empire through social media. It's a platform that, let's be honest, some hate. I mean, there are days when I hate it. Sometimes social media creates these unrealistic expectations and we get sucked into it. But in other ways, social media has connected us on a global scale more than we've ever been able to be connected before. That connection, it's powerful. It's not just about being able to talk to someone halfway across the world. It's about being able to understand the humanity of her life. And in that moment, recognizing your own right to exist, too.
I love being an influencer. I love being chronically online. I love the internet. When I was studying abroad, if I had studied abroad to go to Dubai, if I had TikTok and had been able to been like, Black girl study abroad Dubai, and seen even just like 3 people say, hey, it's going to be fine, or hey, DM me if you're here too, anything like that, I think that takes off a huge layer of stress and like aloneness. I remember winning that scholarship and going to Dubai, my program, and I'm like, am I going to be the only Black girl? Am I going to get othered in my study abroad group? And I think even just semblances, even just seeing a video of a girl walking in a t-shirt and jeans being like, okay, I can do that. Just the representation alone is so important. So I think social media has helped a lot indirectly. It would be nice if there were more direct help too. I think that was the dynamic of me being online and seeing those OG travel bloggers, was just someone's doing it somewhere. That means I can do it. That means it's possible in some reality. And that like opened a small door for me. And now me being online, I've gotten so many messages of like, you just existing the way you do. I don't even want to become a travel influencer. I don't even want to travel. But you know what I did is apply to a scholarship to my school and get half tuition paid for. And I ended up graduating debt free. Just snowball effect of, you gave me permission by existing publicly. That's so powerful.
As we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on some key takeaways from my conversation with Gabby. Lesson 1, embrace the unexpected. Gabby shows up on a 7-day Iceland backpacking trip without any luggage. What happens? We're reminded that travel and life are full of surprises. It's about adapting, learning to rely on others, and pushing through discomfort to find personal growth. When you find yourself in those moments, it's okay to ask for help. Don't wallow in self-pity. Don't keep your misfortunes to yourself. If you're struggling, speak up. Say something. And if you're watching someone struggle, be the person that helps. We all have that person in us. So let it out. Lesson 2, challenge the status quo. Gabby's philosophy behind her travel blog, Packsite, isn't just about travel. It's about breaking mental barriers and questioning the norm. Step out of your comfort zone. Ask why not instead of why. Create your own opportunities rather than accepting the limitations that society imposes on us. You don't have to be neat and organized about it. Just do it. And lesson 3, be yourself, because representation matters. But I'll let Gabby tell this one.
I think most people are always seeking authenticity. They're always seeking community. I do think most people are always looking to improve themselves, and like, you don't know what you don't know. People have that curiosity in life. I think most people are like, I have a sense of adventure and something is itching and I need to go. If that's you, if you're listening to this and you've listened to this conversation and you're like, God, it sounds so good, but I just don't know if people like me do this. Let me be the person to tell you, yes, people like you do this. And if you don't see the representation, if you're like, no, people like me, then you need to be that representation, because there are other people just like you who need to see your story or need to know that, yeah, people with ADD do travel. People in wheelchairs do study abroad. People who have big curly hair and like don't want to straighten it can go across the world for a year by themselves. There's someone else who's wondering the same thing. And the first person who can kind of just say like, hey, I like to do that, or I want to do that. You give permission to other people in their lives to dare to ask the same questions. And that's really important.
An enormous thank you to Gabby Beckford for sharing her stories and her insights with us. If you want to learn more about Gabby, Pax Light, and her super amazing new SaaS startup, SeekPTO, check out the show notes in this episode for all the links you need. And now for my favorite part, our community wander stories. Each episode, I'm sharing a story from you, one of our listeners. This one comes from Nena Fakoya Smith. You can find her on Instagram under Asia Lanene. She shares one of her favorite stories when she was traveling alone, and I think you're going to love it. Here it is.
My name is Nena Fakoya Smith. I'm popularly known as Ajala Nene, and I am residing in Lagos, Nigeria. So I want to share how I missed my flight twice in a week. So I was going to Namibia for a conference where I was going to be the MC for the event. And on my way from Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, I got to the airport. Then it was COVID time, right? A year after COVID, that's 2021. And I was told to share my cards and everything. So I gave them my vaccine card. Unfortunately for me, I'd done my vaccine less than 40 days to my flight because I was ill a week till traveling, so I couldn't do my vaccine. And because this was not allowed, you were not allowed to go if it was less than 14 days. So I had to try and do my COVID test. But by the time I did COVID test, my flight had gone. That was one. Luckily for me, the event people rescheduled my flight and I got to Namibia safe and sound. I did my MC work, I toured the nation, and I had fun. Now, on my way back to Nigeria from Namibia, I had gone to another state, that's Swakopmund, and I was heading back to Namibia, the capital itself. I had some hitches on the way. First and foremost, my car got there late. I wanted to do an activity, but by the time I looked at it, it was late. Our car had an issue. Then we were stopped by the police. Oh my God, it was crazy. By the time I got to the airport, I missed my flight 30 minutes to it leaving. So those are my two experiences. But I learned that plan early, do the right things before you travel so that you don't miss the opportunities. So I have my own podcast called See the World with Ajala Nene, and it launched early this year. We've done season 1. You can check it out for us.
Don't forget, if you want to share your wander story with the world, go visit 85percentpodcast.com and upload your 2-minute travel story. Next on 85%, we're hearing from travel industry leader Stephanie Jones, founder of the Cultural Heritage Economic Alliance, podcaster at The Necessary Disruptor, and winner of our Journeywoman Lifetime Achievement Award. But it was her first time leaving her home city of Detroit and getting on a plane that completely changed the way she saw the world.
Because I had a large family, the only travel I remember as a child is because my mom was from Houston, Texas. Every other summer, she would pack up all the young ones and we would take the train down to Houston to visit, my grandparents and for family reunions. The first time I was on a plane didn't come until much later in my life.
Thank you so much for listening to 85%. Make sure if you want to follow along this journey, you hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast so you can keep up with new episodes as they drop. Of course, we want you to follow along online as well. Go to 85percentpodcast.com. That's numeral 85%, all spelled out, podcast.com. Or you can follow me on Instagram at MaximumBeth. Catch you next time. Safe travels, everyone.